Alright, some context. Face it, Mapcore Hub sometimes hosts these huge $15,000 mapping contests, where mappers are challenged to make new competitive Counter-Strike maps in a certain amount of time. The winners of those are pretty much guaranteed to be featured in-game. Anubis and Basalt, for example, were originally made for the 2019 contest, as well as many more you might remember. All of this might sound familiar, since 6 months ago we reviewed and ranked over 200 submissions for the first stage of this year's event, and eventually 57 of them qualified to continue to stage 2. Congrats! I think I did a surprisingly decent job guessing which maps would qualify and which wouldn't, and I'm glad you all enjoyed it. I recommend a watch if you missed part 1, though it's not necessary to understand this video. Now, unlike stage 1 that mostly consisted of maps early in development with main focus on their gameplay and originality, this time the judges will also be taking aesthetics and visual polish into account. Basically looking for maps that are close to, if not at the level of an official in-game inclusion. So if you want to see how these simple grey box layouts evolved and became actual places, what about them works and what doesn't, or perhaps you just want a sneak peek of the new maps that might be coming into the game, especially since there are definitely some bangers coming up, this video is for you. Let's begin. Now, as I said, 57 maps qualified, but only 35 of them were majorly developed since. 22 submissions were pretty much abandoned or at the very least postponed. In some cases it's reasonable, for example Skyline and Alpine were made mostly by the same people, and instead of putting half the work into both of the projects, they decided to focus their efforts on Alpine, and perhaps finish Skyline on a later date. It is a shame we'll miss out on it, since Skyline was one of my favorite maps from stage 1, but as you'll see later with Alpine, I think their decision paid off. Other maps I enjoyed, like Pango, had the creator face some personal issues that made them unable to keep working on the project much, which is very understandable. Mapping, and especially detailing maps, takes a lot of time and effort that not that many people can afford. Looking at its forum page, it seems that this map was supposed to receive a promising looking future update, and I'll be looking forward to it, but right now, in its current state, it's more or less the same version from stage 1, so sadly, I don't think it will qualify. And as well, many mappers just kinda disappeared without a trace. Kendo's creator made tons of high-effort detailed forum posts showcasing the map's development process and sharing his thoughts all the way through stage 1. But since qualifying, he hasn't posted any updates at all, not even a message or anything. Bamboo Bread, please give us an update. I'll close out this tier by saying that even though these maps are pretty much guaranteed to not qualify into the finals, I would still love to see them be finished eventually. Like, this contest is a great place to make a name for your maps and show them to a bunch of people, but you still can and definitely should update them on your own. I myself had a map that didn't even go through stage 1, yet I'm hopeful for its future and have been slowly updating it over the last few months. I probably won't win any contests anytime soon, but at least I'll have a project I'll be proud to show to people and put into my portfolio. I think that's the important part. So even though the other 35 maps got major updates, still not all of them were finished. This isn't necessarily a reason for them to not qualify. 6 months to detail an entire map is very tight. But considering how the final third stage is meant mostly for final touches and is just 2 months long, these maps are going to have a hard time. Nonetheless, let's take a look at all of them and see how far did they go. Honor, I think, is the least developed from its stage 1 version. It was supposed to be this old castle, but ended up basically just getting some basic textures and details while still mostly looking like a grey box. Apparently Ahandi, its creator, doesn't really enjoy detailing and couldn't find an artist to help him out. Actually, it feels like quite a few mappers found themselves in this situation. There are tons and tons of people that can make maps, but just a few who can actually make them look good. Buckeye as well got a lick of paint and some neat detailing here and there, slightly suggesting its tropic setting, but still feels very empty and greyboxy, if that makes sense. And also 4, one of my favorites from stage 1, also just got some basic textures and even a bit of a nice architecture in some spots, but still has a long way to go. Equation's creator went even farther along in the detailing process, adding many trees and trims and details everywhere, but as you can see, it's quite not up to par with modern CS maps, and it's similarly to maps prior needs much more work. Now, Matinee I almost put in the tier above. It's one of those cases where it's not really finished, there's still lots of work to do, but what is there already is so effective and good looking, I can sort of get a feel for how it would be once fully done. This map is truly beautiful at places and has some very cool features, but regardless, I think with big chunks of the map lacking any detail, it would be a tough sell for me not to call it unfinished. Leagues is in a quite a similar situation, with many parts that already look really promising. This huge oceanarium setting really does the map wonders, but still, most of it is very grey. Once again, I want to reiterate that detailing maps is very time intensive and people have real life and real jobs and stuff, so honestly anyone who even managed to go that far alone deserves some credit. Alright, so in this tier I've put maps that I think are pretty close to being finished and just need that one final push to look amazing. Sometimes it's quite apparent as with Terriera or Taisha, where parts of the map that have been finalized look gorgeous, and the rest is not too far off from there, so now it's just a question of giving the map that uniform level of polish. Also, it's a sort of similar story with Bounce. I went quite hard on it during the first stage, but Robbie Bobby has since put a ton of work into reworking its layout, as well as making this Chuck E. Cheese jungle gym setting surprisingly believable. It features tons of cool interactable games and machines and stuff, and in general has become quite a favorite for its fun factor. I'd say right now the biggest thing holding it back are the texture work and the colors on it. Some areas look great, some look off. For other maps, my explanation for putting them into this tier is a bit different. Let's take a look at Relic. It's quite a nice map, all of the areas are detailed, nothing really stands out as bad, but also nothing really stands out as great. It's kinda hard to explain, but let's take this metro tunnel for example. Compare how it looks here to another submission with a tunnel from a bit further down the contest. Yeah. Again, by no means am I saying that Relic is bad, but more so that CS2 have had its graphics standard risen so high and the competition in this contest is so tough that many otherwise great maps look kinda flat in comparison. Barranco and Gloriosa both also fit this category for me. Nonetheless, I think they all still have a good chance of qualifying, especially considering how I really enjoyed the gameplay on many of them, and with just a little bit more graphics they truly could look amazing. Lastly, I'll also put Shepard into this tier. It's quite an interesting case, where it actually, I think, has less detail than the maps I showed prior, but somehow manages to look even better. I don't know, it's probably something about the lighting or maybe the post-processing, perhaps the shapes of the buildings, but yeah, I love how it looks, though couldn't put it any higher considering how most of the houses lack windows. Add them and you'll have a top tier contender right here. So all of the maps I'm going to talk about from this point onwards are so good, and each one of them can end up being the winner in the end. I'll be comparing and contrasting them a bit, but really all of the mappers here did absolutely outstanding work, and I can't even imagine how much they would improve once through the final touches stage, if they qualify that is. Let's start with Scorch. I absolutely love this map's visuals. This kinda marble ruins type situation, but also mixed with modern elements, really gives off Talos Principle or maybe even Serious Sam vibes, to the point that might start to feel unrealistic for CS. By that I mean that CS2 maps usually try to stick to some more or less realistic places, and an open-air biochemical lab on a huge cliffside might be a bit too much. Though in the past we had maps like Hive be featured in games, so what do I know? Ecolab I feel like is a bit of a more realistic take on the secret virus lab compound Vim, replacing the white marble with greyed concrete and the ambiguous cliffside to a South American jungle. Though it still retains a lot of its fantastical grandeur. Yeah, I'm a sucker for overgrown brutalist architecture, and it's so rare in real life that maybe that's why these maps feel so unrealistic to me. Talking about realism, Grail takes an entirely different approach and uses an intentionally unrealistic style to make a cartoonish Vim park, something like a Disneyland or Super Nintendo World or whatever. It looks great, though I would have liked to maybe see a bit more dirt and wear on the textures to make them feel more like a real-life plastic prop rather than something pulled out straight from Overwatch. Nonetheless, it's great and has some really good level design, which I appreciate a lot. And on the contrary, one map that I feel might be a bit too dirty is Wrecked. It's set around this amazing set piece of a huge wrecked boat and the trash surrounding it. Of course it makes sense for it to be dirty, but I feel like especially with CS2, even dirty places still look kinda neat. Like you look at, I don't know, the trash bags at Dust 2, they are trash, but they themselves look clean and they're uniformly colored and sized. While here it's some real shit. Well, maybe I'm just brain rotting and it's not really an issue, and even if it is, it's solved just by adjusting a few textures, so no biggie. I like this map a lot and already gushed enough about its design in the first vid. Beached has pretty much the same setting, but with double the amount of crashed boats, which in theory should make it at least 2 times better, but I'm still not sure how I feel about this one. It has this thing of the whole map being on a weird slanted angle, which not only makes it feel nauseating to navigate, but also really messes up your muscle memory when aiming. But seemingly the judges didn't feel like it was an issue and qualified it into stage 2 no problem, so perhaps it's not such a big deal. Regardless, I like its aesthetic, perhaps even a bit more than Rect's, though I think it still needs a final coat of paint or perhaps a coat of dirt. Keeping on the topic of dirt, Golden, the one with the cool tunnel I showed earlier, is a map that I think strikes the perfect balance for CS2, being probably a good bit cleaner than you would expect from a gold mine, but also not being too clean to the point that it feels fake and artificial. In general, this map is very well visually balanced, having a good mix of a quaint Japanese village with our beloved Counter-Strike warehouses and factories. Another map that definitely was always set in Japan and never in any other controversial locations is Kurai. It's nicer than ever and as always super unique, being this beautiful mess of roofs and buildings set during what I imagine to be a warm summer night. That just asks for a screenshot. Though I feel like you could do even more with the lighting here. Considering most of the map is lit by artificial lights, you could really go all out with their colors. I'm personally a big fan of orange sodium vapor lamps and feel like they would have added a lot, if added here and there, on Kurai. Lastly, we also have an ambiguous Southern Asian map, Canopy. This was my number 1 pick last time and its gameplay is still fresh as ever. Truly, this map's design is magnificent and I can't glaze it enough. But visual-wise something is going on here. The map is beautiful, a lot of the textures and models are just amazing, but it kind of feels empty. That's sort of what I meant when I talked about maps that are too clean. I mean, it probably helps the competitiveness that there isn't any unneeded trash or shrubbery populating it. But yeah, it makes Canopy feel kinda dead. Though I must admit, these frog statues are so cool, they just by themselves make the map worthwhile for me. Now let's go back to Europe for the next couple of maps. Bridge by Blackie for me is one of the biggest glow-ups since stage 1. To me it initially looked like a pretty sloppy grey box with decent yet not amazing gameplay, but now in this newer version it both plays better and looks great. Even though most of its assets are reused from Inferno, I think it manages to achieve a different enough vibe and feels quite unique as a result. The only thing I'd maybe do is, again, play around with the lighting a bit more, maybe make it sunnier or the opposite darker, but this weird grey middle ground isn't really doing the map any favors. Next up we have 2 maps that are both depicting an old Bavarian town, Timber and Fachwerk. So let's compare them. Fachwerk apparently is the name of this type of construction and yeah, it looks amazing in both maps. I'd say this one does a little bit of a better job with colors, having a delightful and cozy pink-red palette, while Timber is quite reserved color-wise. Though I feel like its textures and architecture is slightly better executed, really giving those buildings a lot of character and a uniform feel. As well, both maps feature some really cool level design thingamabobs, like the drop down the well on Timber or the doorbell on Fachwerk. Yeah, these 2 are bangers and honestly it's hard for me to say which one is better. Another map that uses a lot of wood in its construction, though in a very different way, is Copper, set in, you wouldn't guess it, an abandoned copper mine. It has an amazing layout, as well as some really cool lanes and geometry, and visual-wise it's quite a treat, at least outside. Inside it all gets kinda green and dark and murky, which to me isn't the most appealing though, what do I know about abandoned mines? Alright, how are you holding up? I'm yapping a lot as usual, but yeah, we're down to just 10 maps. Last time I made a separate tier for my top 10 picks, the GOATs, but right now honestly all of the submissions are GOATs. They're so goated, I really couldn't pick any favorites. So we will continue in this amazing tier, but yeah, technically this is my top 10, but not really, it's mostly here to help the structure of the video. I like all the maps the same. Anyway, let's go. Wild is wild. I think I made the joke last time as well, but yeah. It's this huge mesa mountain, cliffside, desert, underground facility featuring tons, and I mean tons of vertical gameplay, as well as some classic Maxim Easter eggs. Cause you know, this map is made by the same guy who worked on Palais, and yeah. We got rats running around, functional bear traps, talking NPCs, laser-activated alarms, and even the lab from Breaking Bad. There's also once again some kind of a big secret with collecting keys, though I haven't figured it out yet. Anyway, the point is that the map is super fun and looks gorgeous at places, especially in this desert area. Now, how competitive it is a different question entirely, though even if it is, I'd honestly love to see it in game regardless. Next up, Palacio is set in this very colorful castle, which apparently is real and is somewhere in Portugal. Now, we all know the best playing CS2 maps are set in Portugal, but this one also manages to look great and really lives up to its IRL counterpart. Especially I want to commend its interiors. They're so pretty and have that nearly photorealistic quality. Like, something about them feels very real to me. The only other place like that I can think of is the kitchen on Basalt. So yeah, really cool map by cool people with a cool clock that actually shows you the real time. Yeah, very cool. Citadel is also cool. It's set on a fort island that apparently the government used to hide super secret weapons. And yeah, of course it needs blowing up. I love the colors on this one. We don't really have many red maps in game, and this shade is very pleasant and makes it stand out. As well, its layout features an underground tunnel going through the whole length of the map, which sounds like a horrible idea, but actually plays quite well here in my opinion. And it also even has white phosphorus munition. Jesus. Stronghold is also an abandoned fort map, though goes for a very different aesthetic. It's hard to say which one I prefer, but this one definitely is one of the closest maps to a 100% completion. Like, it wouldn't feel out of place at all if added to the game as it is right now, and I think that says a lot about its quality. Gameplay-wise, I haven't had enough experience with it to really tell how it plays, but I like the sights. B especially feels really strong and well designed. Really good map. On to Flick. I honestly can't glaze this map enough. It's a really solid layout with a super fun movie production studio theme that seamlessly combines an old western town, a news station, and a piece ripped straight out from Ancient in a single map. Like, what else can you even ask for? As well, it hosts a bunch of genuinely funny Easter eggs, like numerous parody movie posters, the Mollywood sign, or the working piano, or the bomb plant changing the color of the floor here. Yeah, it's great. Looks good, plays well, truly a map to behold. Now, Tundra is special. I think it, in its design, contains a lesson in simplicity. As you can see, it's arguably much less detailed than most of the other submissions we have looked at so far, being just snow and metal boxes, but it's so effective. Like, this T-spawn is probably my favorite T-spawn I've ever seen, and its A-site is so simple yet elegant. Yeah, I love this. Like, for me at least, this map manages to both look and feel amazing without any crazy shapes or complex architecture. It just does what it does extremely well. I respect that a lot. Another map I respect is Jura. It's this castle somewhere in Poland, and I must say, its gameplay is really polished. Truly one of the best playing submissions from the ones I've tried, featuring a unique layout, kinda sorta maybe reminiscent of a nuke, where after taking a ramp, Ts can decide to skip B and flank city spawn instead. Yeah, you need to try it yourself to really get a feel for it, but trust me, it's really good. The visuals aren't anything outstanding, but they are clean, pleasant, and represent the real place quite accurately. Maybe can do with a bit more color, but honestly it works, so I can't complain. Warden is a cat food map, and you can instantly feel that. He's the guy behind meals and some other layouts that you've probably seen during early CSGO operations. His style is very recognizable, to me at least, and I love it. Being kinda blocky, and once again not really using any super complex shapes, it just works really well. Plays super fun, looks great, and still retains a feeling of a real place rather than a video game level. This prison setting especially is unique and a joy to explore, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this one ends up being the winner. unless Contact steals its win first. I gushed a lot about Contact in the first video, and yeah, it's great. A pioneer with its new so-called flattened nuke layout that I've literally never had a bad time on. And since it got polished even more and got a new lick of paint, and what can I say, Dreadile really cooked on this one. It's beautiful, there's so much to look at, and it's so nice and shiny and dirty, but not too dirty and just yeah, I like this map a lot, and the only thing holding it back from qualifying is the tough competition. Alpine, on the other hand, plans to take the token hostage spot. Like, basically historically, no matter what, at least one hostage map always qualified into the finals in these contests. So Alpine's only real competition in that case would be other hostage maps like Wild and Matinee. We'll see who comes out on top, but I think Alpine's chances aren't that bad. Its setting is this perfect blend of a pleasant ski resort, a cozy hotel, and a brutalist sauna, with each one segmenting its portion of the map perfectly and providing unique and memorable visuals as well as gameplay. It's also one of the few maps that actually makes hostage mode work in a competitive setting. Now, I'm probably quite biased towards it since I'm good friends with the creators, but what can I say? It's really good. And yeah, this concludes my overview of the second stage of the Mapcore Big Adventure contest. I'm sorry it wasn't as climactic as the last time. I just really felt that all of the maps are worthy and really I couldn't pick any favorites truly. I've been playtesting custom maps on and off for the last maybe 6 years, and this contest had some of the best stuff I've ever seen. We'll find out the results in just a few days, actually I think maybe even tomorrow, so I'll update you once they're out, so make sure to subscribe it to not miss them. Special thanks to Olaf and Shady for checking out the maps with me on a stream that I'll link in the description of this video, as well as huge thanks to Nordic for once again helping me out with the tier list visuals. And of course, the biggest thanks to the creators of the maps and the organizers of the event, as well as you, the viewers. I hope you all enjoyed this Yapfest. If you did, leave a like and tell me what you think. But yeah, I'll close out by saying that regardless of the results, I think all of those maps should eventually be finished. They all have lots and lots of potential, and as I said, many great maps are made, but very few great maps are finished. And it's an important distinction. Having a project you truly feel is done is such a great feeling that not that many mappers experience. So let's change that. Dear mappers, lock in. I wish you luck in stage 3, as well as in mapping and life, I guess, in general. Have a good one.